Welcome to The Wedding Edit, a wedding planning podcast for the modern couple. We are your hosts, Kelly and Dana. So today we are answering all of your burning questions. So we put our Q&A box up on Instagram, on our business pages, and also our Wedding Edit podcast page. And we have selected, the most popular questions that we were asked, and we're going to answer those questions for you guys today. Are you ready, Dana?
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
So the first question is actually one that I get asked a lot by couples when they book me, and it's, what does the average wedding cost?
$50. No, I'm just kidding. I've answered this before and I've got it so wrong. It's changed a lot since we got married in 2013. So, I would say that the average wedding is probably like, if it's on the cheaper side, it's still like a lot of money. So it's not like cheap in any means.
And like we're talking like big wedding, not elopement. When we say wedding, I guess I'm assuming.
Yeah, so like 80 to 120 guests.
Like I'm assuming sort of average number of guests like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you have a lot less guests.
Well, I'm thinking like 40,000 on like the lower end, and then more like 80,000 on the high end, so like double.
You're probably right. For me, being a wedding stylist, the clients that come to me are obviously booking me because they have a, reasonable budget.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they don't really need a stylist if they're DIY.
Yeah.
Everything.
Of course.
So I guess I would probably say majority would be around the 60 to 80 mark in terms of 60 to 80,000, not 60 to $80.
Yeah.
But I also have other weddings that have a bigger guest list of, maybe 250 to 300 guests, and their budget's like 100 to maybe 160.
Yeah.
So it depends on the individual couples.
Yeah. And I think that's just what we're going to explore in this episode as well is the two ends of the spectrum when it comes to these questions as well.
Yeah, there's just so many variables.
There absolutely is, yeah.
And you can't, we could easily sit here and say, oh, well, it depends on you guys.
Yeah.
But that's not really helpful.
Yeah, well, people will say it's just one day, but then people are like, but it's one day. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's one day in the course of your whole life that you're like never going to get married again. So you may as well go all out. You're going to celebrate, your relationship together. You want your guests to be well looked after, all these things. So you want it to be, a really beautiful celebration, but you also want it to be reflective of you as a couple. So you do want to spend that money, but then also you might be a really modest person and you're like, but I could definitely, if I cut my budget in half, I could, have half my budget going towards a house deposit and then the other half going to a modest kind of lower end, more affordable wedding, which is totally fine. And I think it just comes down to personality, priorities, what your perspective is, what's important to you in life. And it's not to say that, you're very, superficial if you do spend more money on your wedding.
No.
If that's something that's important to you, then that's totally fine.
But I mean, in saying that, if you're the sort of couple that you're super adventurous, you really don't see the value in spending, $40,000 to $60,000 on a wedding. Maybe you don't really like being around large groups of people.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, your ideal wedding might be going to Vegas, eloping there together, and then spending $30,000 on a trip around the world, or that might be something that's more valuable to you to have those experiences. So it is very individual.
Yeah.
So we don't want to pigeonhole it to, this is what everyone should spend.
So with elopements, I think it's a really good thing to mention that you can have things more your way in a sense. So if you are a bit more of an anxious person, or if you don't like to be the center of attention, for example, or big crowds as well, you might have people that you don't want to invite to your wedding, and you might just want it to be like the your 5 closest friends and your immediate family. I think that's a really good way of doing things, eloping or having a micro wedding, so that you can actually do things the way that you want to do them. But also you might have a bigger budget than for flowers or any kind of styling things. Yeah, things that you might be able to have, like a 10 course degustation if you want to have that. So
I thought you said 10 mil, like as in million. I was like, $10 million on
10 mil,
on an elopement.
Yeah, meals. It was like
10 meals, like
courses. Yeah, 10 courses. So me, I feel like dessert would be really important. So
yeah. So
having a really nice dessert as well as probably a wedding cake or some kind of thing would be really important to me. I know that wouldn't be as important to Doug, but and I've thought about this a lot because Doug and my 10-year anniversary is coming up. It's in 2023, so next year. And we, aren't that happy with our wedding photos and would like to get some new wedding photos. So I was like, well, why don't we have just a different celebration, celebrate 10 years? We did a renewal in 2020 that was just so glorious and beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant you guys, but you did one for someone else. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. And I feel like it was just like the very essence of that couple and what was important to them. So talking about budget with weddings, let's talk about some things that you might be able to cut or some like budget savers. That's another question that we've had. So what are some things that we can look at cutting to save some money?
Yeah, so this was a question that came up a bit. We've got a lot here. I've got a lot of things, a lot of suggestions. The first one I would go to is wedding favors because unless it's part of your like tradition and, culturally it would be offensive if you didn't give wedding favors. I think a lot of couples that don't have the need to do that often think they have to because it's a wedding. So they're like, we have to, it's rude if we don't. But it's really not anymore. And majority of weddings I do don't give wedding favors anymore. So
they just get left behind.
They do. They get left behind a lot of the time.
People are drinking and like forgetful, and unless they put them in their purses, but then sometimes people don't have big enough purses, or if you're a man, you just don't have a purse normally. So I agree. So it's probably, again, it's one of those things that if it's part of your family tradition and it's going to be seen as offensive and it's something you have to do, then that's fine. But if you're a couple that's looking to save money and it's not important to you, cut it. Ask yourself, why are we doing this? Yeah.
And if you don't really have a good answer.
You're already spending so much money on having that person come to your wedding. You're giving them
a free night out.
Yeah, and maybe like cocktail hour, like so canapes, drinks, and then drinks and dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. So with cutting things, I think that it definitely, of course, again, comes down to what's important to you and your perspective on the particular thing. For example, for us, we didn't have a lot of flowers at our wedding, so it was a lot cheaper or a lot more affordable. But I just think that there's like a bunch of things, like if it's important to you to have it, to keep it, and if it's not important to you, that you can cut it. But there's lots of like, if you think about the main things that you need for a wedding, there's lots and lots of things that you can actually cut. Obviously don't cut the cutlery because you might need that to eat with. But it could be the difference between having a cocktail and a sit-down wedding though as well, which we'll talk about a bit later as well. But I was thinking about how you could have a wedding website to save on Rsvps if you do want to send out some paper invites. But if you didn't want to send out paper invites, if that's not your thing, you could do digital as well. So
that's a good
option.
Good cost saving. Also welcome signs.
Yeah.
I mean, most people know why they're there.
Yeah.
So like they don't think it's like, your birthday when they turn up. So like having a, this is welcome to our wedding sign, it's not necessarily needed.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I do love a good welcome sign with a beautiful floral installation, but
it's a bit overkill.
It's not needed.
Yeah.
So I think if you were going to choose between a welcome sign and a seating chart, if you're having a sit-down wedding, obviously you go, well, we have to have a seating chart.
Yeah.
So make that the beautiful, piece, and it could have your names on it and whatever, a quote or something, and then a floral next to that. But I don't think you need a welcome sign.
Yeah, I've seen lots of welcome signs that have also just fallen over in the wind. So they just get put to the side because they're just going to continue to fall over. And you don't want your welcome sign falling over in the middle of your ceremony, making a ruckus
I've got a story about that. I had a couple who got married and it was like 40 to 50 kilometre gusts of wind.
Yeah.
And it was an outdoor ceremony and they had a welcome sign hanging like with the hooks from a stand, and it actually nearly like injured some of their guests because it just flew and just flung off, like ripped off the hooks and just went flying, and the bride hadn't even arrived yet. So I just think there's another wasted welcome sign.
Yeah. I was thinking if a bride was okay with it having like a secondhand wedding dress. I was thinking like specifically a wedding dress. Yeah. So, I mean, you could find a secondhand suit as well, or potentially I think if you can hire your suits out or hire your outfits, like there's so many different things you can do now with bridesmaids and groomsmen, suits and dresses and all of those kinds of things. So I know that there's lots of suppliers that do hire out suits, and I would recommend that. And I don't think it's a bad thing if somebody wears their own shoes that they already own.
Yeah.
I don't think that's cheap at all. I think that's actually a really smart thing to do, and then their shoes are already like worn in, etc.
Well, otherwise it's wasted. When I was a bridesmaid for my friend, we all got matching shoes and I think we all paid for them, or maybe she paid for them. Yeah. But I didn't wear them ever again after that. Yeah. Because they weren't the sort of shoe I would wear again. They were really high. They weren't comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wasteful. So I suppose, does everyone have to wear matching shoes?
I don't think they do.
Can they just buy a pair that they're going to wear again?
Yeah.
That's, a way to save money and the environment all in one.
Yeah.
One thing that I don't care about, like when it comes to like my own wedding and didn't have, was wedding cars. Mm-hmm. I just do not care about cars.
Yeah.
My dad drove me and my wedding party in our Mazda. And I just said to my photographer, just, like maybe don't get the car in it as such. But I don't know, as a photographer, do you feel like car's important because the bride arrives in the car? Or do you not have to get the photo of the car?
I personally don't like taking photographs of the car unless it's, I guess, a bit different to the norm. Like I think we had an old Chevy truck or something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So the bride had a photo with her groom, but also with her dad because it was her dad's car. And I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only time that I've been like, oh, this is really nice. As well as like we had cars in our own wedding where like one car that I turned up in was a Monaro, which was our friend's car.
Oh, right,
and that was really important to Doug. But also we had one of my dad's cars in the wedding as well. So there was some really nice cars in the wedding.
But you didn't have to pay for them as such.
No, of course. And I think a couple of things about the cars is that you are paying them per hour. And it is really important that if you are paying them per hour, that you're actually really smart with the time that you do have with them. So make sure that if you are getting cars, that you have your photographer and videographer where the cars are and with you at the correct time to be able to have the photos and the video that you do actually want to get with the cars. Yeah. And you do need to talk to your photographer and videographer about it, because if we don't know something that is important to you, then it's highly likely that it might not get covered unless it's one of the bigger things.
Yeah.
But I think that one huge thing to do with the cars, besides the timing and paying for them, is making sure that they know all of the locations, that they have the timeline, that they're across that.
Yeah.
And you do need to double check with them, because otherwise they don't know. They might not look at it. And the other thing was just that if you are getting married in summer, it's very hot here. If you do have a 41-degree day, even if it's 35 or 30 degrees, these cars don't have air conditioning.
Well, the old
think about it.
Cars.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, what about people who hire the Audis and the Mercedes, like the newer cars as well?
Yeah.
So they're you're just assuming it's a classic car.
Yeah, I'm just assuming it's classic. But yeah, I suppose like I haven't had many of the newer cars, to be honest, apart from like limos and stuff. But even then, when I think of a limo, I guess I'm not even thinking that.
I think of school formal.
Well, yeah, but I'm not even like
think of a
I'm
wedding.
thinking about a people mover. I'm not thinking like that this bridal party want to get a photo with the car.
Yeah, because you're just thinking the bride's or groom or wedding party's arriving.
Yeah, you know. I'm just thinking they want to be in style, not that they actually want to have any photos or video of it.
Yeah, I just don't know. Like, unless cars are really important to you.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a cost you need.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely. It's so expensive. You can just Uber. Like you can get friends to drive you. There's heaps and heaps of ways that you can do it that will be cost effective. That
you can still get a show. Like we got for my wedding, like at the end of the night, we needed obviously to get to our accommodation, and we were in a wine region, so we needed to organise something. And I was like, I don't want to call a cab, you know, or an Uber at the end of the night in case it doesn't turn up, and like it's your wedding night. So we booked like a chauffeur, like a driver, but it wasn't like a fancy car. No. It was just a driver service to get us to our accommodation. I don't even know what car it was. I mean, I was probably a bit drunk at that point, but yeah. So one of the other ways you could save money is reusing floral arrangements. So from like your ceremony to your reception. So, or thinking about, you know, and whenever I'm working with couples, I work with them on, well, what do you really want for your flowers? And then what can we reuse and where? Mm-hmm. So often, you know, if there's a ceremony arrangement, we'll make sure the florist will build it in a way that we can then move a piece of it to be sat next to the seating chart, or just reuse whatever we can, or move the arbor with the floral into the reception area.
Yeah.
That's a way that you can save money. Like I had a wedding where the bride really wanted two sort of floral arrangements to line the back of the aisle, and we were like, well, we don't need to then add flowers to the gift table, because we'll just take that and put it on the gift table, and then we'll take the other one and we'll put it on the bar. So it saved, you know, maybe $500 or $600 there for her. Yeah.
Oh, it's really good when they can reuse the flowers from the ceremony into
the reception.
Yeah. I think also potentially dried flowers might be something if you're foraging yourself, which you could.
Yeah, dried flowers aren't cheaper than fresh flowers generally.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're more expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, if you're foraging or collecting some of it, I guess the benefit of dried flowers is you can get more life out of them, you know, because they're everlasting, and you can take them home and style your house. So it's like double purpose, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe not saving you money, but it could be beautifying your house afterwards.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So on flowers, buttonholes, that's something that I think could easily be done away with. I'm sure that there's some people out there horrified hearing that right now, but
most people are like, what's a buttonhole?
Yeah. Most people don't know how to put them on. But I feel like it just depends what kind you get. If you get like a flower head that is like a rose, that's guaranteed not to even last into the reception, to be honest. It'll be like falling apart and looking really bad. Yeah. So, and that's just going to ruin some photos. So you might as well take it off.
That's where dried works better with buttonholes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
really
even the family buttonholes.
Yeah. They're not really that needed.
Unless your family, again, are going to be deeply offended that they don't have one.
I feel like they would honestly, not always, but some, like family can be, you know, in two minds about it. They can either be like, oh, I'm so offended I didn't get a buttonhole, or they can be like, I do not want to wear this thing. It's going to ruin my outfit.
Yeah. But it's one of those things that I did for my wedding. Like I'm pretty sure I got buttonholes for like mum and dad and then the grandparents and everyone.
Yeah.
And
I don't even know why we do them. Like, what is the point of them?
I didn't actually stop and think.
Yeah.
I have a choice in whether I do this.
Yeah.
I just did it. I
just something on the list.
Yeah.
So you do.
I really don't think you need to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they can cost $25, $35 each.
Yeah.
If you add that up, if you've got a number of people.
Yeah. If you've got like 16. Oh, no, that's a lot. But I was thinking about the bridesmaids.
Well, if you've got like, you know, 4 or 5 people in the bridal party plus another 5 to
2 sets of parents
family
on each
members,
side,
it's a lot. It adds up.
Yeah.
Another question that you guys asked was non-traditional things that we've seen at weddings. What are some of the non-traditional things that we've seen?
Yeah.
So I feel like you've got a lot more here than me. So I'll tell you like a couple of little ones that I saw at the same wedding. This couple, I won't talk about because there was one thing that they did that I think is an example you're going to give. Yeah. But so instead of having a cake cutting, they got a piñata and a like bat.
Yeah.
And they smashed the piñata.
Yeah. What was in the piñata?
Like just lollies and things.
Yeah. Okay.
But they served dessert. I think they did have a cake or something, but they didn't want to do a cake cutting.
Yeah.
So, and they did it in their cocktail hour.
Okay.
Because they had a first look, another non-traditional thing.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
They just were like hitting this big habit.
But like they did a first look, so they also, that's a little bit non-traditional.
Yeah.
Not so much these days, but it meant that they could go straight from ceremony into the canapes and cocktail hour with their guests. Yeah. And then they just like smashed the piñata and they did all their speeches in cocktail hour.
Yeah. That's so good.
They got all of those formalities out of the way. And then, the other thing they did at the ceremony was because this particular couple met when they were both out one night and they were drunk on tequila.
Yeah.
I think they both liked tequila, so they ended up like, I'm not sure the whole story. I'm probably going to mess the whole story up, so I won't go into it. But what they did at the ceremony was they got like a bottle of that particular tequila, which was their favorite. And I think when they did their vows, they both had a shot of tequila.
Yep.
In front of their guests.
Good. Yeah.
And so it was like a bit of a surprise for everyone and it was kind of like a quirky thing to do.
Yeah.
That was very them.
Yeah.
Which I really liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
What about you? What have you seen?
Well, so you mentioned the first look before, and that's something it's getting more to be the norm now, I feel. But there's a few different reasons why people do it. Either they don't have enough time or they think that their photos are going to take hours and hours, which they don't, just FYI. But if it's really important to the couple that they go straight into like a canapé hour, like that they don't spend any time away from their guests, first look is really good for them. Yeah. But also it's good for any brides or grooms that may have some nerves or are anxious, that kind of a thing. It's not for everybody though. Some people are like, I definitely only want to see my fiance at the end of the aisle type thing. So, but it is very good. And the only thing that you do need to kind of consider is that the light might not be as good and you would potentially, most likely, and I would recommend still having sunset photos.
Yeah, I think so. But like, I think that a first looks good when it's starting to get darker earlier.
Oh, absolutely.
Like April, May kind of time when it's
even if it's like if you're having a winter wedding, you most definitely need to have a first
especially
look.
Because we worked on a wedding where the couple, it was like an intimate wedding, and I can't remember if they did a first look in the end.
That day.
But it was like late April, and we worked out because the venue wouldn't let them have a ceremony earlier than sort of 5 p.m. By the time their ceremony was ending, it was getting dark. Yeah. So I think it was great because you were like, it was probably in that perfect sunset time. So they got to have like sunset photos and bridal portraits at the same time. Yeah. But it's not, it's definitely something to talk to your photographer about before you send out invites with times on them. I also went to a wedding of some friends in the wedding industry in Adelaide, Chelsea and Peter, and they had, I don't actually think they knew about this, but their MCs organised a little activity for them to do in between, like, I think it was sort of like in between speeches or something, just to like for a bit of a laugh. And it was, they basically sprung it on them. They were like, all right, guys, we're going to get the bride and groom to get up and paint a portrait of each other.
Yeah.
And they just pulled out and they put on funny music.
Yeah.
And they both had to just they were facing each other and they had 1 minute or something.
Yeah.
It was really, and the paintings were just hilarious, and it was just a really funny moment.
Oh, that's
and I don't know if that's
fun.
a non-traditional, but it was just
I
something
like
funny, and entertaining to do at a wedding.
So one thing that I've seen a few couples do, and one thing that one of our couples had done, there was certain circumstances in it, but they had to postpone their wedding. They decided to get married anyway and not tell anyone. So literally Doug, myself, and the celebrant only knew that they were married for an entire year.
Oh.
They postponed their date to the exact date that it was going to be, that their wedding day was. And then they just announced that they'd been married for a whole year to their guests. Yeah, but they still had a full
ceremony.
Yeah, it was a full wedding.
Yeah.
And it was just their happily ever after party.
Oh, that's
which
so
was
nice.
Really cool. Yeah. But lots of people were doing.
That would have been a hard secret to keep for a year.
Oh, it was fine for us because
they didn't wear rings around anyone.
No, so they were so cute. They had their rings and they just wore them to bed. And then sometimes as well, they wore them on a necklace.
Oh, that's so cute.
So yeah, but there was little hints and things that they had that people just didn't pick up on. I think when it was his birthday, she got him a card that said from your wife. And people would come to their house and it would be out, but nobody noticed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, but we actually caught up with them. We went because they lived down southeast, and we caught up with them one time just for dinner because we were down there for another wedding. And we went to this pub and they had on the little sign on the table the name of the that they were taking. So the Smiths, for example.
Oh, yeah.
So it was really cute, or Mr. and Mrs.
Oh, yeah. And so this is before everyone else knew they were married.
Yeah, because we knew, and they could relish in the fact that we knew that they were married, so we could talk about married life with them and all of that because nobody else knew, but we knew, so they could be completely open about it with us because we knew their secret.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. But I think that lots of couples are doing things like that as well. So we've seen other couples do it as well in the way that they're just it's kind of like that first look if you are a little bit nervous as such or a bit anxious, that you might actually just have your intimate ceremony
just the two
elsewhere,
of you,
and then do something else, and then you've got the formalities out of the way. And for some reason, because it is it can be, or it feels so serious to people, getting married and having that saying I do to each other, they like to have that separate. So
they can have a friend do it on the actual kind of party reception day.
Yeah, so you could have then somebody else officiate your wedding day that isn't
in a more fun way, and
exactly. But also I've seen people separate their celebrations altogether, so they might have an intimate ceremony and then just a reception party later.
I've got one of those coming up next month.
Yeah,
they're having the ceremony, elopement style ceremony the day before, and then the reception the next day.
Yeah. See, I love it when it's like that, because also you could separate it into 3, and we've seen this as well, and it's very American as such, but people do an intimate ceremony at one location, and then another day they have their reception party, and then another day they go out and they do all of their portrait photography at a destination that they love and adore, so that they can get the mountains of New Zealand while they're having their wedding in a garden somewhere that's nowhere near the mountains. Such. Yeah. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah. So Kelly, one question that we've received was about cocktail versus sit down and what the considerations should be with each.
Again, totally comes down to personal preference. I suppose if you have been to weddings yourself, what do you guys prefer as a team? cocktail isn't always cheaper in terms of sometimes people think they're going to save a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
You might save on things like flowers because you don't have as much table space to cover the flowers. And also things like if you're having like a private property or dry hire wedding and it's a sit-down wedding versus cocktail, it's probably going to be cheaper because you don't need as many chairs, you don't need as many tables, plates, cutlery, all that stuff. So it will definitely be cheaper in that regard, but then you're probably going to spend more on lounges and, you know, like there's depending on what you do for furniture, and it all depends on your venue and what they offer and what they have. But, yeah, I think it's individual. Like if you really like to sit down and have a beautiful meal and you like the table styling, and like for me, I had a cocktail wedding. I don't regret it, but at that time in my life, I thought this will be more fun. Everyone will mingle, like it's not so formal.
Yeah.
But now that I'm in the wedding industry and I'm a wedding stylist, I love doing styling tablescapes.
Yeah.
So I love a sit-down wedding for that reason.
Yeah.
The linen and the just like the having the beautiful like the menu on the plate and all of that sort of stuff. So for me, that would be my preference.
Yeah.
What about
I feel
you?
like too with cocktail weddings, you are kind of encouraging them to leave earlier as well.
Yeah, well, but also not always, because it could just get the party started earlier.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the dance floor.
Yeah.
Because time with a cocktail wedding, I think the food service side of the formalities are not as strict.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Is it? Because people can sort of mingle and they can have a little dance if they want, and then they can eat something and then they can have a boogie, and then like they're not sort of tied to the table and they don't have to sit there and wait for their meals to be served and then eat and then get up.
So in talking about cocktail weddings, it's really important that you do talk with the venue or the caterer, whoever is catering, about how much food will be coming out and communicating with them about them continuing to bring the food out. Like I suppose one thing that you don't want to have is that people are bringing out food and offering and people are saying no, and then they're going back to the kitchen and being like, people don't want this food, people aren't hungry anymore. Those platters, that food needs to be put down somewhere so that people can go and get it, because you don't know if the staff are actually going around to absolutely everybody for starters, and you also don't know if those people, you know, want that food right then or in 10 minutes. So there needs to be access to that food throughout the entire night, and you just don't want to have your guests being hungry or being left hungry.
Or just spreading out when the food comes out so that it does continue to come out all night.
Yeah.
And, I mean, one good thing for a cocktail wedding, I think because of the food thing being a bit of an issue with cocktail weddings, sometimes there's people that don't get enough food. I think having a late night snack or a gelati cart or pizzas coming out when everyone's on the dance floor, and people can just some sort of finger food. That could be something to just keep people going as well.
Absolutely. So you will need to talk to your venue obviously about that, because if you have outside catering as well, sometimes there's a fee or whatever for that as well. So that's something that you'll need to check with them. But I think it's a great idea having lots of different options for food, like so having like a grazing board, having a cocktail hour, and then having snacks and different types of food, because not everybody might want whatever the main feed is as well. Yeah. One of our couples actually brought out cinnamon scrolls, and they were like the best scrolls I've ever eaten in my entire life. I had two. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
On the dance floor.
Yum.
So, yeah, they were amazing. And they were like quite local to the area, which was super annoying on one hand because it was like 6 hours away from here. But yeah, I could have eaten my weight in those cinnamon scrolls. They were like so good. Yes.
So what do you prefer, cocktail or sit down?
I think definitely sit down.
If you were going to get married again now?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like cocktail was a trend when, even though we got married a few years apart, I feel like cocktail was sort of like a trend then. Yeah. And it's moved back to now to sit down. Like most of the weddings I do now, a sit down.
Yeah. Oh,
I
absolutely.
don't really
And
do many cocktail weddings.
I think that, we thought that cocktail would have people like mingling, and it was just easier not doing a seating plan as such and thinking about that, because it was a bit more kind of like a dry hire for us, even though there was a building there and everything.
A seating plan can be stressful.
Yeah.
So that's a
Absolutely.
benefit of cocktail weddings.
Yeah. Well, we had lots of family that I was like, I can't sit this person near this person, et cetera, et cetera. So that was just going to be really hard. And then like knowing the size of the marquee, and which we put in like last minute, as well as the tables, and knowing where everything should go. Like I left it up to the venue to decide, because it was just too hard.
Yeah.
And then so we had enough tables and chairs for everybody to sit down if they wanted to, but we just didn't have like allocated seating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another question we were asked is one piece of advice you would give to every couple.
So I'll go as a photographer first. So when you are looking at your photographer, this is probably like three points.
Yeah, okay.
But when you're looking for your photographer, make sure that you find somebody that you vibe really well with, that you also know will look after you, like look at how they look after their couples. Number 2 for that is make sure that you see a full gallery, at least one.
Can
actually.
couples ask for a full gallery?
Oh, absolutely. And
so you're happy to
recommend
release it? Do you need like permission from the couple to release?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of couples that we have asked that we're like, is it okay if we
share as an example?
Yeah.
But it's obviously like secure, so they can't download photos and stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
And the third one was listen to your photographer when it comes to timings.
Yeah, that's important.
Super important.
So that's your advice as a photographer.
Yeah.
What about as a past bride?
So I think for me, one of the hardest things was just making decisions. So I would just say to just make a decision.
What if you're not a particularly good decision maker?
Oh, I know it's hard, but like if you just look at, I suppose this is where your partner or fiance comes in, because you need to be supported. And if you are having trouble making decisions on some things, then you do need to have somebody weighing in on those with you, and hopefully somebody that's a bit more level-headed when it comes to making decisions.
Yeah.
Because, I feel like there are so many decisions to make.
What were the decisions that you found hard? Was it styling related or more planning and?
Oh, it was just like everything. Like I feel like I put off making a decision for lots of different things when I could just say, oh yeah, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that if you are looking between two things, to talk to your fiance about that and then just make a decision together on what you think. So, but other than that.
Or seek help from someone in the industry who knows and can help you with
talk
those
to your
decisions.
photographer.
or your stylist. Yeah. Because I was just thinking then not to plug a service, because a lot of stylists and planners have a similar service to what we offer, but with a styling consult or I mean, it's not even necessarily just about styling, but I've often had couples just book an hour of my time just because they can't decide on a venue and they just want to pick my brain about 3 or 4 venues they've looked at and like what they should be looking for. And so you can ask someone who's an expert in the industry if it's something you're struggling to make a decision on. You can always like spend an hour ask if someone will give you an hour of their time to pick their brain as well. Yeah,
that's good. That is really good advice. I think also just with making your decisions, make sure that you are making your decisions for you.
Yeah, not for the people around you that are telling you what to do.
It just becomes a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
And too many cooks.
Yeah. I think my advice as a past bride would be to, I guess one thing would be like, I think about the things that are most important to you.
Yeah.
And one of those things that I probably didn't realize at the time was actually important was photography. And I think I didn't realize you could ask to look at galleries or do things like that. I kind of just went photography, I'll just get that one, and like flowers, that'll do.
Yeah.
Like I think now that I'm in the industry, I think quality is so important.
Yeah.
And not necessarily talking specifically about my photographer or florist or anything, but I'm just saying like everything that I would book now, I would probably spend a bit more time researching.
Yeah.
And just not just tick it off like, oh, it's a checkbox, but actually think about each one and go, is this my style? Is this my aesthetic?
Mm-hmm.
Do I like their work? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's really important, like researching and looking into different things. I have had some upset brides call me like in the last few years saying basically, are you available? We hate our photographer.
Oh, like, after their wedding or before?
No. Before or after. Like we've had a few, like some, like I haven't heard from my photographer. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're going to be at my wedding. Like, are you free this day? And then also just like calling me and being like, we don't like our photos. Can we get a reshoot?
Yeah.
Like not from us. Like people love our photos, thankfully. But that's like your worst nightmare as a photographer is hearing from your couple that they don't like their photos. Like, oh my gosh,
that would be the worst.
Yeah. So
I think like customer service is so important, and I've talked
really
about it before.
Yeah.
And I think when you're inquiring, if you don't get a good vibe about someone, or they're not responding in the according to your expectations of when they should respond, and if you just if it's not feeling right, look elsewhere. I think. So
absolutely.
But I don't know, like advice I would give from a stylist perspective, not so much a past bride. I think the biggest piece would be to get really clear on what's really important to you guys from a styling perspective, like visually for your wedding, and don't go back on those things. So like really put more of your budget into those things and work out what are the things that aren't. And we've talked about this in another episode, I think budgeting maybe. Yeah. But that's probably a big piece of advice I would say is just, make sure that you know what's important to you and you know what's not as important to you and be willing to compromise.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have to.
Yeah.
Some people might not have to.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Wedding Edit podcast with Dana and Kelly. We hope that you've really enjoyed this episode. If you do have any burning questions that you would like to ask us and you would like us to answer on the podcast, we would love to hear from you. You can contact us, contact@theweddingeditpodcast.com.au. Send us a DM on our Instagram, The Wedding Edit Podcast, or you can also contact us on our contact page on our website, www.theweddingeditpodcast.com.au.